In a world where loyalty and valor were once celebrated, a shocking reality emerges from the heart of war. Russia has turned to North Korea for reinforcements. Yes, you heard that right, 20,000 soldiers from one of the world's most reclusive regimes are being sent to Ukraine. This tale unveils the crumbling facade of the Kremlin's grand narrative, where the myth of an unwavering Russian army has been obliterated by the harsh truths of conflict. For decades, Vladimir Putin has woven a story of unbreakable loyalty and unwavering discipline into the fabric of Russian life. We were told that every young man sent to battle embodied this sacred narrative, representing the glorious legacy of a great nation. But this illusion has been shattered, crushed beneath the weight of the ongoing war in Ukraine. No longer an army solely consisting of Russian soldiers, Putin's military has exhausted its ranks, consuming its own future in a futile struggle. In a desperate move to fill the gaping void left on the front lines, Moscow has reached out to a dark chapter of history, North Korea. The recent clandestine delivery of 20,000 soldiers underscores the alarming collapse of the Russian military, once considered a formidable force. Whispers of this audacious plan permeated intelligence circles for weeks, until a comprehensive report from the Ukrainian National Resistance Center confirmed its gravity on October 1, 2025. As the war rages on, Russia has suffered over 1 million casualties, leaving it unable to find recruits from within its own borders. Thus, the Kremlin has turned to this brutal dictatorship, marking a significant and shameful shift in military strategy. This influx of foreign troops may offer temporary relief for Moscow, yet it signifies a dire admission of the Russian army's weaknesses. These 20,000 North Korean soldiers are not merely reinforcements, they are emblematic of the grave military and moral crisis enshrouding Russia. Deployed to the Kursk Oblast, directly opposite Ukraine's Sumy region, they are positioned in one of the most intense theaters of war since the conflict began. This secretive movement underscores the growing desperation of a regime fighting to maintain its grip on power and its facade of strength. This partnership, however, serves a dual purpose. For Kim Jong-un, deploying troops abroad while bestowing medals upon generals back home is a veiled attempt at uniting a restless populace. But even he cannot mask the reality that having an abundance of soldiers means little when faced with the staggering losses on the battlefield. Casualty estimates from previous North Korean deployments reveal a stark picture, with approximately 4,700 of the initial wave already lost amidst the chaos. The emerging narrative suggests these soldiers are utilized not as troops but as expendable shields in the relentless pursuit of preserving Putin's crumbling front lines. But what awaits these new recruits? As they cross into Ukraine's heartland, they'll find themselves outmatched in a modern battlefield they cannot comprehend. They might be equipped with outdated weaponry, confront hostile forces armed with advanced technology, and encounter tactics that feel worlds apart from their training. The harrowing truth here is that they are caught in a meat grinder of geopolitics, sacrificed to bolster a failing military front, as the world watches in disbelief. This isn't merely a story of war, it's a striking portrayal of desperation, oblivion, and the lengths to which regimes will go to ensure their survival, even at the cost of human lives. As the echoes of gunfire resonate across the northern front, one must ponder, can these 20,000 bring about a change in the tide, or are they merely pawns in a dangerous game of survival? Only time will reveal the grim fate awaiting those thrust into the turmoil of a conflict that seems to have no end. Will this desperate alliance alter the course of history, or will it be yet another chapter in a story marked by loss? In a shocking move, Russia turned to North Korea for military support, recruiting a staggering 20,000 soldiers from one of the world's most oppressive regimes. This desperate act marks not just an attempt to fill gaps in the battlefield, but a clear sign of the Russian military's failure. As reports reveal, these soldiers are not merely reinforcements, they symbolize the collapse of a once mighty army, shattering the myth of Russian strength that leaders like Vladimir Putin peddled for years. The recent deployment is part of a meticulously organized operation aimed at bolstering Russia's dwindling forces in the ongoing conflict. The location of these troops, the Kursk Oblast, was chosen deliberately, positioned directly across from Ukraine's vital Sumy region. This secretive move reflects the Kremlin's acknowledgement of its own military inadequacies, while simultaneously highlighting the desperate measures it is willing to take. Ironically, these North Korean soldiers, now stationed on Russian soil, serve as a grim reminder of Moscow's vulnerability. However, this situation presents challenges not just for Russia but also for North Korea's leadership. In a bizarre twist, Kim Jong-un recently summoned his generals back to Pyongyang and awarded them medals of valor. While this grand gesture may fool some, he cannot escape the stark reality: sheer numbers mean little when faced with battlefield defeat. Reports allege that the cohort of 20,000 is just the beginning of a troubling trend, suggesting that this is the third installment in a series of military shipments from North Korea. The previous shipments included roughly 15,000 troops, and the outcomes were far from favorable. Tragic consequences unfolded as it became clear that these soldiers were sent to the front lines of some of the most perilous battles, leading to an estimated 4,700 casualties, some wounded critically, others losing their lives. The casualty rate exceeded 30%, raising alarming questions about how these men are actually being utilized. Instead of engaging in traditional combat, the fate of these North Korean soldiers hints at a more sinister role. They appear to be thrown onto the battlefield as expendable assets, effectively used as human shields in a brutal game of attrition. With each new wave of soldiers, the grim reality of their situation becomes clearer. They are mere pawns in a desperate struggle, likely destined for the same tragic end as their predecessors. How long can this charade continue before the myth of invincibility crumbles entirely? In the chilling shadows of modern warfare, a heartbreaking reality unfolds. A world once held under the banner of superpower status now finds itself teetering on the brink of desperation. The alliance formed between Russia and North Korea, driven by necessity rather than camaraderie, emerges as a sordid tale of doom, a stark illustration of how far the mighty have fallen. Stripped of its ability to recruit from its own population, the Kremlin now delves into a treacherous pact with the world's most isolated regime, a regime that thrives on intimidation and iron-fisted control. Intelligence reports reveal a horrifying truth: Vladimir Putin is trading invaluable military secrets, nuclear capabilities, missile technologies, satellite systems in exchange for 20,000 North Korean soldiers. This dark exchange not only poses an imminent threat to Ukraine but casts a long shadow over global security. Imagine the implications. What will the world become when Russia, once a superpower, barters its most dangerous military assets to a third-world dictatorship for mere cannon fodder? This isn't merely a war crime, it is a reckless gamble with humanity's future, a descent into moral bankruptcy that compels us to question our very existence. The North Korean soldiers are heading to a nightmare, expected to face the brutal realities of combat on Ukraine's northeastern front. Stationed in the Kursk region, they are thrust into the most harrowing battle zones imaginable, places heavily fortified with advanced Western weaponry. These areas pulse with chaos, where survival is a fleeting dream against the relentless onslaught of modern warfare. As they dig in their makeshift trenches, the North Korean soldiers come face to face with a technological landscape they cannot comprehend. Equipped with archaic weapons, they stand no chance against a military machine refined by innovation and strategy. What awaits them in this hellscape? As they prepare for the worst, they remain blissfully unaware, grappling with the harsh truth that the odds are drastically stacked against them. The chilling sound of drones fills the air, a prelude to the storm brewing above. A Ukrainian surveillance drone observes their movements from afar, relaying vital information to artillery units poised to strike. The outcome of this tragic deployment appears grim. This is more than just a story of soldiers in a foreign conflict. It is a haunting reminder of how quickly power can dissipate, how desperation can lead to unspeakable alliances. As the clock ticks down, the world holds its breath, awaiting the arrival of these 20,000 souls, pawns in a game far larger than themselves. Will they find glory, or merely become another chapter in this tragic saga? In the recent, brutal battles on Ukraine's front lines, North Korean soldiers are caught in a nightmarish reality. Deployed to the Kursk region, they face one of the most perilous missions imaginable, as Russian commanders use these soldiers as cannon fodder in their desperate struggle. Equipped with outdated Type 88 rifles, which are mere copies of the Soviet AK-74, these soldiers are painfully aware of their role, expendable and ill-prepared for the high-tech warfare that surrounds them. Imagine this: a South Korean bird's-eye view captures the grim sight of these soldiers. They dig trenches, using primitive techniques that echo a bygone era. But unbeknownst to them, a silent killer looms overhead, a Ukrainian surveillance drone. As it hovers silently, it relays their position to a nearby HIMARS battery. Just moments later, the roar of launching M3A1 missiles shatters the eerie calm. Each missile bursts in the air, releasing over 180,000 sharp, tungsten projectiles that rain down like a hailstorm of destruction. Soldiers scrambling for cover find little respite. The invisible storm tears through their ranks, leaving chaos in its wake. For those who survive, hope is fleeting. The Ukrainian artillery, armed with advanced American-made M777 howitzers, unleashes a torrent of high-explosive shells. These precision strikes transform the trenches into an inferno. The relentless barrage strips away whatever is left of their resolve. And just when survival seems possible, the fearsome roar of Bradley armored vehicles enters the fray, equipped with rapid-firing cannons. As they unleash a hail of bullets, the fractured North Korean forces collapse under the weight of overwhelming firepower. This is not merely war, it's a grotesque clash of anachronistic strategies. The North Korean troops, thrust into a digital battlefield of the 21st century, become unwitting participants in a tragedy they are ill-equipped to face. Every second, the stakes rise, and every moment could be their last. What hope do they have in a conflict where survival is the only goal? The reality weighs heavily, crushing any notions of glory. The echo of gunfire surrounds them, the acrid smell of smoke fills their lungs, and confusion reigns. Stranded in a conflict with leaders who view them as mere pawns, they are forced to confront a harsh truth: this isn't a war they understand, nor is it one they are ever likely to win. What fate lies ahead for these soldiers caught in this deadly game? The clock ticks on, and with it comes the ever-present specter of despair. Would you gamble your life in a battle designed for another's gain? The answer hangs in the air, heavy and foreboding. Previously, we explored the grim fate awaiting North Korean soldiers in Russia's war against Ukraine. This isn't just a battle for them. It's a brutal collision of outdated 1960s tactics and gear against a cutting-edge, networked war machine from 2025. Amid this nightmare, talk of their fighting spirit or discipline crumbles under the chaos. Imagine the shocking betrayal: hordes of troops left starving and deceived, their loyalties shattering into rage. How far will desperation drive sold-out warriors in a land of unknown tongues and killer odds? Their sole aim now? Just to stay alive amid the mud. But their commanders and so-called Russian allies make it nearly suicidal. Basic tools fail them. Issued with Type 88 rifles, clunky copies of Soviet AK-74s from home, these fighters lug meager ammo. No ballistic vests. No proper helmets. Communication? Primitive radios at best. Night vision? Forgotten in the dark. Blind, deaf, and exposed, they're hurled at the world's elite forces. Human suffering mounts. Russian troops scrape by on paltry rations, yet North Koreans face total neglect. Hunger gnaws like sharp claws. Exhaustion weighs heavy as lead. Trench filth breeds epidemics: dysentery with its gut-wrenching cramps, typhoid fever spiking sweats, even HIV risks lurking in contaminated needles. Smells of decay seep into the air. Rotting sores itch and burn. Bodies shiver through endless nights. Psychological scars deepen. These men feel utterly betrayed by their dictator. Word from South Korean intelligence shocks: over 2,000 deaths and nearly 5,000 North Koreans lost in Ukraine before this fresh 20,000-strong force. As comrades fall senselessly in a pointless conflict, brainwashed devotion erodes into venomous hate. Not just aimed at Ukrainians or Russians. Mostly at Kim Jong-un, who traded their lives for cold hard cash and tech. Despair foments a desertion plague. Invisible tremors of mutiny ripple through the ranks. What twisted path greets defectors in a strange empire where both sides brand them traitors? Yet for those who flee, altars stand, elusive havens promised by Ukrainian partisans. Whispers of escape carried on winds. Can they evade the hunt, or does doom await? The front's abyss beckons further revelations of betrayal's bitter cost. What's next for these forgotten pawns, choking on fumes of their own king's greed? Hold tight, the fractures widen. In the midst of an endless war, an unsettling transformation takes place within the hearts of North Korean soldiers. The unwavering loyalty they once felt towards their leader crumbles, giving way to an overwhelming anger and despair. This tumult of emotions isn't merely directed at their Ukrainian or Russian adversaries; their deepest resentment is directed at Kim Jong-un, the tyrant who bartered their lives for a few grains of rice. As hopelessness seeps into their bones, an unexpected wave of desertion begins to ripple through the ranks. But in a land where the unfamiliar language hangs in the air like a heavy fog and the geography is foreign, desertion seems near impossible. Soldiers face hostile environments where both sides are eager to extinguish their lives. Yet desperation knows no bounds. Reports from Ukrainian intelligence and resistance sources indicate that groups of North Korean soldiers are quietly slipping away from their positions. Some tightly conceal themselves within wooded areas, while others muster the courage to reach out to Ukraine's I Want to Live hotline. This isn't merely a breach of military code, it signifies the moral dissolution of an entire army. Yet, can Putin's gamble with the enlistment of 20,000 fresh North Korean troops offer any semblance of success? The answer looms darkly, an emphatic no. This phantom battalion is marked for failure from the outset. The root of the dilemma lies in a communication chasm that cannot be crossed. How can North Korean soldiers, devoid of the Russian language, follow commands given by Russian officers? The inevitable mishaps, misinterpretations, and chaos during combat create a perfect storm for catastrophe. Their lack of familiarity with the terrain exacerbates the predicament. A soldier trained to navigate the rugged mountains of North Korea is utterly ill-equipped to contend with the expansive plains of Ukraine. Without knowledge of safe trench digging spots, evasive maneuvers from incoming shells, or the vigilance needed to spot drones, these soldiers remain painfully outmatched by skilled Ukrainian forces. Instead of fighting for a cause, these North Korean troops face an existential void. Their counterparts, Ukrainian defenders, stand resolute, fighting for their homes and freedom, while nationalist Russian soldiers cling to the myth of their motherland. Amidst all this, what drives the North Korean soldiers to battle? What is there for them to believe in? After delving into the heartbreaking situation of North Korean soldiers forced into combat, we ask a crucial question: what drives them to fight on foreign soil? While Ukrainian troops defend their homeland with unwavering resolve, North Korean soldiers find themselves on the battlefield for fleeting dreams fed to them by an unfamiliar dictator or merely for a few sacks of rice to send home. This absence of motivation serves as a lethal poison, undermining any sense of resolve. The moment adversity strikes, surrender or retreat becomes their instinct. The staggering assembly of 20,000 North Korean soldiers on the Ukrainian front reveals not a display of power but rather a dismal symbol of Russia's strategic decline and moral frailty. The presence of these soldiers is unlikely to alter the war's trajectory. Instead, countless North Koreans will be consumed by Ukraine's merciless war machinery, leaving a trail of despair and escalating resentment back in their homeland. This act epitomizes a desperate alliance between two tyrannies clinging to one another in a bid to survive. In the chilling landscape of Ukraine, these faceless soldiers face their demise without understanding the reasons behind their sacrifice. Their cries, a haunting echo in the trench-laden ground, carry beyond borders, igniting a deep national agony back home. The pain stirs moral outrage and demands a crucial strategic reaction in the streets of Seoul. Putin's gamble transcends immediate military measures in Ukraine. It sends ripples through global geopolitics, activating dormant tensions between Washington, Beijing, and the Korean Peninsula. For South Koreans, news of North Koreans fighting in Ukraine becomes a profound tragedy, a stark reminder of a nation divided for 70 years by unseen borders yet united by language and culture. The tragedy unfolds as families remain estranged, torn apart by ideology while yearning for connection, and the ghosts of soldiers lost in distant trenches deepen the wounds of a fragmented identity. In a tumultuous land far from home, a war rages, leaving a scar too deep for words. A nation mourns, people divided not only by borders but by decades of propaganda and ideological walls. Yet, in a staggering twist of fate, they share the same culture, the same language, and even familial ties across the invisible line that separates them. But now, a shocking reality unfolds: young men from North Korea are hurled into a brutal conflict, destined for an unfamiliar reality shaped by another dictator's ambitions. The headlines in South Korean media flash urgent stories of defectors, interrogations, and heartbreaking casualty counts, each figure stark and haunting on the front pages. Reports speak of 2,000 soldiers from North Korea who have already perished in Ukraine, igniting fierce debates and awakening a sense of social accountability among the South Korean populace. The opposition parties in Seoul push for a more assertive response to this grim trade of lives. Activists take to the streets, raising their voices against what they see as a humanitarian crisis, an immoral spectacle unfolding before their unwilling eyes. Ensnared in a moral web, the South Korean government finds itself at a crossroads. On one hand, traditional caution whispers to avoid escalating tensions with the North. On the other, the clamor of its citizens and its closest ally, the United States, demand a stronger stance against this egregious affront to humanity. Faced with these conflicting pressures, Seoul sharpens its diplomatic language, condemning both Pyongyang and Moscow in stark terms at the United Nations. In a striking display of resolve, sanctions tighten further against North Korea, reflecting a growing outcry for justice. This national outrage transforms into a clever strategy for Washington. Putin's audacious decision to deploy North Korean troops provides U.S. diplomats with an exceptional opportunity to isolate Russia on the global stage. The implications are profound. Russia, a permanent member of the Security Council, has blatantly breached United Nations sanctions, trading human lives for military advantage. This act draws the ire of international law, marking Russia not merely as an aggressor, but as a rogue state willing to exchange enslaved soldiers for geopolitical gain. As the pieces on this grand chessboard shift, the stakes rise ever higher. What will be the fate of those 20,000 North Korean soldiers now caught in this deadly conflict? And can their desperate deployment prevail against the relentless forces defending Ukraine? The answers to these questions linger ominously in the air, waiting to unfold as the world watches. Imagine stepping into a room where the world's power shifts. Russia's blatant disregard for UN sanctions has transformed it from aggressor to pariah. Now, the United States is turning up the heat. Did a rogue like Vladimir Putin just hand over forbidden tech for cannon fodder? What hidden alliances could spark global chaos? Shocking revelations reveal how Moscow's desperation endangers us all. In a tense UN chamber, global spotlight on the seat of international law. The U.S. ambassador demands an emergency session of the Security Council. Digital screens flicker with undeniable proof. Satellite images piercing the fog of secrecy. Intelligence dossiers thick with classified truths. And echoes of fleeing soldiers, haunted voices, breaking free. Their stories unravel the horror. Survivors whisper of grueling journeys. Mud-caked boots grinding against frozen earth. Acrid smells of gunpowder lingering in the air. The sting of cold metal chains symbolizing enslavement. Lives bartered like cheap cargo. Why has Russia turned to this dark bargain? They're asking. Is it courage or cowardice that forces trading humanity for survival? The meeting isn't mere theater. It's a gauntlet thrown at neutrality. Countries like India, Brazil, and South Africa hover at a crossroads. The message cuts deep. Choose the light of human rights and global order. Or stand alongside a regime peddling souls in the 21st century. Voices rise in the chamber. Accusations whip like a storm. The air thickens with unspoken threats. This diplomatic storm clears the way for ironclad sanctions. Washington gains the moral armor to unleash its fiercest blows. Secondary sanctions poised to freeze Russia's veins and beyond. The U.S. Treasury unleashes a shadow net. Targeting not just Russian firms or North Korean proxies, but seizing on third-party conspirators. Any bridge for military cash or arms deals between the two outcasts. At the heart of this web? China. Beijing's denials thin under scrutiny. Containers of ammo whisper through its ports and banks. Is silent complicity becoming active treason? To Beijing, this isn't just geopolitics. It's a nightmare unfolding. Russian troops imported from Pyongyang? A slap to China's stability dreams. Fears of North Korean collapse bubble up. That regime's terror grip over its people absolute, unyielding. Yet, swapped soldiers expose cracks. Kim's throne teetering on borrowed might. Officially silent, behind closed doors, strategists sweat. Roars of debate in smoky rooms. Coffee cups trembling in anxious hands. The knot tightens. Dollars could slip away. Financial lifelines severed. Picking sides no longer optional. Jinping's balancing act wobbles. Unconditional ties to Moscow strain. Each shipment through Chinese veins risks the abyss. Exclusion from the Greenback Empire. Firms gasping, currencies crumbling. Suddenly, the twist emerges. Russia's not drowning alone. XM2 dictators trading secrets for flesh. Nuclear whispers escaping. Missiles humming in hidden labs. Satellites spying unseen skies. The globe holds its breath. Will China back down? Or watch as Putin's fire consumes them all? Cliffhanger looms. What if a leak exposes Beijing's secret delays? Could hidden North Korean defections ignite a revolution, humiliating alliances across boards? The tension builds, unanswered, as international jaws tighten. In the chaotic shadows of Vlad's crumbling empire, China watches as its ally scrambles for North Korean troops to feed the endless maw of war in Ukraine. What nightmare scenario is unfolding for Beijing, where an ally's desperation threatens to ignite China's deepest fears and shatter its global facade? Picture the thunderous roar of artillery echoing across those blood-soaked fields, and the acrid stench of gunpowder clinging to the air like a shroud. Could this reckless gamble topple a rogue regime and flood China's borders with chaos? This audacious ploy ignites one of Beijing's gravest terrors, the risk of North Korea's brutal dictatorship unraveling into instability and collapse. At the heart of Pyongyang's grip on power lies an ironclad reign of terror, absolute control enforced through fear that silences dissent and crushes spirits. Yet, now, the pointless slaughter of thousands of soldiers in distant foreign trenches threatens to fracture this fragile hold. Whispers of these senseless deaths filtering back home would erode the regime's foundation, sparking doubts among the populace and even within the military ranks. Why die for a leader's whims? Such questions could dismantle Kim's authority, his legitimacy crumbling like dry earth under relentless rain. The fallout? Millions of desperate refugees surging toward China's borders, unleashing turmoil across the Korean peninsula. From Beijing's vantage, this spells catastrophe, a grim vision where the United States and its ally South Korea step in, forging a unified, pro-Western Korea right on China's doorstep. The bitter taste of uncertainty lingers. A palpable tension that forces China to confront an alliance pushed to its breaking point. As Beijing grapples with this looming specter, the silence from its leaders masks a storm of doubt. Will Russia's shameful pact with a pariah state expose China's double talk on the world stage, or force it to rethink a partnership costing more headaches than victories? Diving deeper, this gambit delivers a crushing blow to China's carefully curated image as a reliable global giant. Peking professes unwavering commitment to international norms, honoring the sovereignty of nations. But here it sits, complicit by inaction, as its closest comrade flouts United Nations sanctions, importing what amounts to conscripted thralls from another outlaw regime. This blatant contradiction eats away at China's standing abroad, bolstering Western claims that Beijing and Moscow are renegades bent on dismantling the established world order. The hypocrisy stings, a sharp pull at credibility that echoes far beyond diplomatic circles. And in China's eyes, this desperate maneuver reveals Russia's true frailty starkly. Allies sworn to boundless solidarity now stoop to conscripting mercenaries from the planet's most destitute, isolated outposts to drag the conflict forward. Russia emerges no longer as an equal powerhouse, but as a volatile drag, a headache-inducing liability dragging Beijing into unpredictable waters. The move compels Peking to recalibrate the boundaries and burdens of its Moscow ties, questioning if the cost of loyalty outweighs the fraying benefits. Will this awakening spark a bold pivot? Or deepen the web of complications trapping global powers in a dogfight for dominance? Can China afford to ignore the whispers of upheaval, or must it act before the tide sweeps away everything? As these developments simmer, with the metallic clang of uncertainty gripping the air. In a world where grand illusions can crumble in an instant, the once mighty Russian military apparatus finds itself teetering on the edge of chaos. For years, Vladimir Putin meticulously crafted a narrative of unwavering loyalty and indomitable strength, a myth that promised every soldier was a hero destined to protect the motherland. Yet, with grim reality gripping Ukraine, that narrative has imploded. The unthinkable has occurred. Russia, struggling to maintain its front lines, has resorted to recruiting soldiers from the isolated regime of North Korea. How did it come to this? The answer lies in staggering losses, over 1 million soldiers claimed by the ravages of war, and a domestic outcry against more conscription, which has left the Kremlin rattled. Unable to rally enough men from his own populace, Putin has reached out to one of the world's most despotic regimes. In a shocking twist, 20,000 North Korean troops are set to join the fight, a desperate attempt to patch the gaping wounds of the Russian army. But the implications of this move go far beyond the battlefield. China, once a silent ally, watches in dismay as it risks being drawn deeper into this quagmire. With every shipment of soldiers comes the potential for instability in North Korea itself, a regime reliant on absolute control. If the news of its soldiers' fates leaks into the oppressive corridors of Pyongyang, it could spark questions that undermine Kim Jong-un's grip on power. Is Beijing willing to gamble its own security for an alliance with a faltering partner? As these North Korean soldiers prepare to face a modern combat environment, they inherit a grim legacy. Lacking the sophistication of Western military technology, they become nothing more than cannon fodder against a highly advanced and lethal Ukrainian defense. Stuck with outdated weaponry and tactics, their chance of survival dwindles with each passing day. Putin may envision this alliance as a way to regain momentum, yet it teeters on the brink of turning into a scandal that further isolates his regime. As southward tension mounts, South Korea is pushed ever closer to its Western allies, sealing an unspoken historical division. Now, the very act of enlisting these desperate soldiers risks exposing Russia's substantial inadequacies and moral decay. With vulnerability exposed, the question remains, how long before the consequences of sending these soldiers to die compound, accelerating the inevitable collapse of an already fraying empire? In each trench filled with North Korean troops, the echo of impending doom reverberates louder. A desperate attempt to reclaim a waning power leads to an unyielding path toward ruin. The ghosts of fallen soldiers may not change the course of the war, but they could well be the harbingers of a regime's end, illustrating the inevitable demise of a moral and strategic vacuum. Imagine this, a global superpower crumbling so badly it's importing soldiers from a pariah state, trading nuclear secrets for cannon fodder. Is Putin's iron grip finally slipping into oblivion? That grim reality hit the world on October 1, 2025, when a Ukrainian report unveiled the shameful secret. Russia, desperate and depleted after losing over 1 million troops in Ukraine, turned to North Korea for 20,000 fresh bodies. But insiders from South Korean intelligence dropped a bombshell. This is the third big shipment. The first two, totaling about 15,000 soldiers, were thrust into the fiercest battles, only to be obliterated in a total catastrophe. Reports estimate at least 4,700 from that first wave are dead or grievously wounded, a staggering casualty rate over 30%. How did it get this bad? Why is a nation that led superpowers now begging from the world's most isolated tyrant? To grasp this catastrophe, picture the scars etched deep by 3 years of relentless war. Russia already teetered on the edge of a population abyss before the conflict, the air thick with desperation, the ground heavy under the weight of silent fears. Then came the maelstrom, over 1 million military deaths, plus at least that many educated youths fleeing conscription, their footsteps echoing in panic as borders trembled. Good men and women vanished or exiled, leaving Putin's mobilization pool as dry as cracked earth. Failed call-ups only worsened the rot. Mobilization waves sparked ferocious backlash, society erupting in chaos. Visualize the stench of burning recruitment offices, the crack of fists on draft officials. The trampling horde surging toward frontiers. These scenes scream fragility, exposing the Kremlin's crumbling hold on its people. Putin quakes in mortal dread that another mobilization could ignite an uprising, flames licking at his throne, ready to consume his power. Unable to muster his own, he bartered with another dictator's pawns. Yet the darkest twist? This isn't camaraderie. This mercenary deal reeks of filth, two exiled regimes swapping souls for forbidden tech. Western spies whisper that Putin hawks his prized nuclear submarine reactors, intercontinental ballistic missile blueprints, even cutting-edge satellite systems, to Kim Jong-un, starved for such secrets. For what? These 20,000 troops, hurled into Putin's crumbling lines. Is this brilliance or madness, risking global fire to eke out months in Ukraine's inferno? A war crime masked as strategy, betraying the world for a tactical mirage. Will these numbers bend the tide against Ukraine? Sent to the northeast front in Kursk Oblast, opposite Sumy and Kharkiv regions, they're cannonaded into hell's mouth. Primitive tools meet drone-eyed doom. A unit scratching trenches hears the distant hum, sees nothing, then tungsten hail rains from above, shredding flesh in supersonic agony. Survivors gasp amid the acrid smoke, only for artillery to roar, explosive shells pulverizing earth, the ground shuddering like a living quake. Bradley vehicles creep in, 25mm cannons unleashing fury, silencing the stunned remnants. 1960s tactics clash with 2025's networked war machine, the air pulsing with lethal precision. Can Kim Jong-un spin this defeat for his people, his promotions a hypnotic veil? Or does he face the raw truth, millions of troops mean nothing in Ukraine's grinder? As new pawns feed the machine, fate seals their doom. Human shields in Putin's last stand. Will the North Korean will crumble in the dirt, reduced to survival's primal scream? And what price will the world pay as dictators barter humanity's darkest tools? The front lines tremble, secrets spilling like blood. Will this alliance ignite the spark that devours them all? In a stunning betrayal of superpower pride, a crumbling empire is now forced to import warriors from the world's most brutal outcast, swapping nuke secrets for bodies in a war that's devouring lives like candy. Imagine leaders like Putin and Kim Jong-un, shaking hands while the globe watches in horror. Could this vile pact ignite a nuclear storm, torching peace for mere months of survival? Diving deeper, leaks from South Korean intelligence revealed this shipment as the third major one. Soldiers from the previous two, totaling around 15,000, were shoved into Ukraine's fiercest hellholes. Disaster struck relentlessly. Estimates show at least 4,700 from that first wave dead or maimed, a gut-wrenching 30% slaughter rate or more. How did a nation built on rocket launches sink so low? Why beg from tyrants shrouded in nuclear mystery, hiding millions in bunkers? To decode this desperate tumble, envision the deep gashes carved by 3 brutal years of battle. Russia teetered on population collapse before the carnage, the air humming with unspoken dread, the soil vibrating under boots fleeing the draft. War unleashed a tempest, over 1 million troops vanished to graves or wounds, matched by that many bright minds bolting borders, their frantic heartbeats pounding against barbed wire. Putin's reserves shriveled to dust, parched and barren. Mobilization flops festered the wound. Government summons lit fires of rage, sparking riots that smeared the streets. Feel the sulfur stench of recruitment centers ablaze, fists thumping against officials' chests in wild fury. Crowds surging like a tidal wave toward frontiers, trampling dreams. These explosive outbursts laid bare the regime's frail grip, threads snapping under sheer terror. Putin sweats nightmares of fresh drafts sparking revolts, flames climbing to topple his iron throne wreathed in shadow. Cornered, he struck a deal with Kim's enslaved hordes. Yet this filthy bargain? No bond of brotherhood, a transaction in blood for forbidden firepower. Intel buzzes that Putin peddles coveted treasures to Kim, nuclear submarine cores pulsing with danger, intercontinental missile blueprints slicing through skies, advanced satellite eyes peering from orbit. For a meager 20,000 troops, hurled into Ukraine's maw. Is this cunning gambit or lunatic gamble, courting planet-scorching fallout to clutch fleeting breath in Kiev's furnace? War atrocity camouflaged as genius, endangering humanity for hollow gains, exposing Russia's gutted soul, ethical void, and blind folly staring into oblivion. Can these imported ranks shatter Ukrainian lines? Deployed to Kursk's northeast flanks, opposing Sumy and Kharkiv's war grind, they're fed into infernos. Outdated tactics clash with digital slaughterhouses. Soldiers hacking shallow trenches catch the faint whine of doom, glimpse nothing, then air erupts in supersonic tungsten quills, tearing bodies with invisible fury, flesh ripping and screams muffled by shock. Survivors choke on gunpowder haze, lungs burning from the metallic tang, skin slick with sweat and grime only for maelstrom follow-up. Artillery thunders, explosive ordnance from M777 howitzers pulverizing turf. Earth quaking like a beast awakening, shrapnel whistling a deadly chorus. Bradley beasts roll forward last, 25mm guns roaring a finale, shredding dazed remnants with merciless whir. 60s-era slugs meet 2025's networked killers, precision pulsing through veined skies. Does Kim spin these defeats for his masses, medals dangling like hypnotic chains, or confront the savage reality, legions worthless against Ukraine's grinder? As fresh meat props Putin's facade, their fates echo sacrifices in a corpse engine, human barriers cracking under unbearable strain. Will Korean resolve fracture in the mud, reduced to primal gasps for air? And as tyrants haggle forbidden wares, what toll will humanity endure? Fronts shudder under duplicitous veins, does this unholy tie harbor sparks that will immolate them both?